Craziness and uncertainty reigns as we prepare for the U.S. Grand Prix. Welcome to Pitwall, your stop for fantasy Formula One content. These are statistical secrets that you need to know heading into this race weekend. So I'm Jay Jack, and let's go. First thing that you need to be aware is that the second free practice session will not pertain at all to the race, as reported in the feed and on what I'm sharing with you this article. The second free practice at the USGP is entirely dedicated to testing the Pirelli tires for next year. That means we cannot take any of the data used during FP2 for the race. And what does that then mean? We got to take all of our data off of FP1, which is crazy because of what I'm about to share with you. And we've got 5 drivers, brand new testing that has to take place. That means Leclerc, Ricciardo, Bottas, Latifi, Magnussen. We have no data on these individuals because we had Schwartzman, Palou, Pourchaire, Sarge, and Giovinazzi. Giovinazzi did 4 laps, 3 technically, and crashed it, bended in the wall, didn't come back out. And so we have to stay posted on if that's going to affect Magnussen's vehicle. It is good news for Schumacher, who was better than all of those other drivers, but that's to be expected. He's been racing the whole year. But that isn't good for Haas that he's that far back. You'll also see that Sainz is the fastest car by about 0.2, but how is that going to change over the course of FP3? And you're going to have to pay attention. Why this is also crazy is FP2 is traditionally the best indicator of how you're going to do during qualifying because it's around the same time that qualifying would be. Well, if FP2 is going to be for Pirelli tire testing, we're not even going to get those times, which means that FP1 and FP3 are going to be based off of tire and track temperatures that are not going to be indicative of how the quali will be. But let's look here on the right to see how this would look. Sainz, Verstappen, Hamilton. I'm going to highlight Hamilton here because he is eligible for a power streak. And then Stroll. Stroll is fascinating here. He might be a really good pickup. Some of you guys have already picked him up in the past, but depending on your budget will then dictate how he looks moving forward. Shout out to Fantasy Tunin, Matt from South Africa in your analysis right here that you've posted out on Twitter. Now, not all of this can be confirmed, but this is the projected, what we're expecting, hearing the broadcast. The only things that have been confirmed is that Perez and Zhou did take a 5th ICE, or internal combustion engine component. And at the very end of the broadcast, they did announce Perez with a 5-grid drop penalty. So that is the only thing that we have confirmed on our documents. Everything else is supposed to be announced tomorrow during FP3. Leclerc, Sainz, Alonso getting drops, maybe Verstappen, who was on the radio talking about his car giving him some problems, might get a drop. So then he says, what about Norris turbo driver? Okay, well, let's look into that. First, like I've hinted at before, we've got Hamilton, who's looking like a really good option. And don't mind Norris. I had an issue in my spreadsheet that I haven't been able to rectify. Norris is only eligible for a race streak. That's plus 10 points. Hamilton, though, is eligible for a power streak. That is plus 15 points. And if you look over here on the right, you see that Hamilton, who used to be the second most expensive driver, is now even cheaper than Perez. Here he has the greatest drop of any driver, $9 million drop. And so if he keeps dropping, he might be eligible for turboing, which would be fascinating. He would have to drop $2 more million. And so that's a problem. Do you pick him up this time to get his points, but recognize that he could drop another $2 million because he dropped over $2 million between last race and this race? Well, that's going to tank your team's value. So you got to be careful with that. But he looks like a very solid option if you got these other guys starting at the back of the grid. Something also fascinating, like I mentioned with Stroll. Stroll does have the highest average when it comes to gaining or losing positions at 5. Well, that'd be 10 points that you could gain every single race. And let's look at how much Stroll's costing right now. 9.2 million with a value of 0.1. So he's around what he should cost. And he's getting 1.2 points million. Over these last few races, they've really balanced things out. We used to have drivers that were above the 2% value estimation. And now they've gotten them all very close to what they should be. If we go down to our teams, Red Bull is eligible for a quali streak. With their engine penalties, we've seen that they might still be able to get in the top 10 if they're trying to beat the other guys, but it depends on how many guys start at the back of the grid. But if they've got the most fast car, then that should be still a good option. So we have Aston Martin, the 3rd fastest overall time, which is good, especially because you had Stroll setting the 4th fastest time. You had Vettel top 10, and that was about a second between Vettel, who was in the 138, and then Verstappen was in 137. Now, if Sainz is going to get a grid drop, but Verstappen is not, then that means I won't change too much in front of Stroll. But it all depends on how many positions are you going to get after qualifying's over, and then maybe lose them as faster drivers come in to the pack. But back to our rank, it's looking like if Aston Martin only costing 11.6 is really an option, then maybe you could put a Hamilton-Verstappen combo or get Verstappen on your team and ride him out for the rest of the year. The problem is then how are you going to make sure to get off of Aston Martin back to Red Bull later, because that is a huge price difference between the two. And so that's things that you're going to have to balance out and try to figure out for your team. I'd like to promo for you our one race challenge, one team, one entrant, one opportunity to see how you compare to everyone else. Now, I'd recognize the last couple races I have not been able to keep up. I am working with the Discord group. You can follow us on Twitter or in Discord. That's where I usually post these now to keep up with it. But as soon as this race is over, I'm going to update for Singapore, Japan, and the US all the results. That'll be great. Thank you for everyone who's participating. If we can get up to 50 people to join the league, then that means that we can be a part of the large leagues when they're averaging them out for each race. And I appreciate each one of you who's been along for the ride. We've got people fighting towards the top as we go for our ORC leaderboard, and I will be posting that hopefully once that's all updated at the end of this race weekend. It's now time for my PITWALL Picks. You'll notice that Team 1 is got 1 sub left, so a total of 122.9. And then my Team 2 has 2 subs remaining and has 122.2. Look at that, only a 0.7 difference between them. Because I used the Mega Driver on Team 1 last race, I've been able to get the deficit within 10 points. I should have used the Mega Driver on Verstappen last race on Team 2. I did not think through it all, but because of the whole weird turbo driver thing between Perez and Sainz, Perez kept his turbo driver on for Team 2, but it switched off to Sainz on Team 1 by accident. No! Anyway, so what are we gonna do if we're looking at our team value? Well, Leclerc, possible for that quality streak. Like I said earlier, he got no good run in because he had Schwartzman in for him. Let's say Sainz is having his engine penalties and stuff like that. Let's see, we got a Stroll in here with his pace. Okay, that would leave me 5 million left over. And then if I switch from a Leclerc and Perez are both looking pretty fast here. So let's say because Leclerc can get a quality streak. So the reason I'm laboring over this so much is because Hamilton lost $2.7 million last. And so you have to be careful with who's your gainers. So theoretically, the guy who's going to most gain is Sainz if I drop him. The problem is who are you going to then turbo? So let's say I do drop Leclerc. Then I would then have enough for Hamilton with 6.6 million left, which then could allow me to drop Magnussen and get a decent guy for 12.6, which could give me back Alonso. Oh, so let me undo all that, because if I had Alonso at the beginning and you switch Leclerc to Hamilton, okay. Oh, that's the thing. I can only do one substitution. Because I had Ferrari last time, I switched back to Red Bull, and then I switched off of another driver so I wouldn't get the huge drop off. So that means I would only get one substitution here. That could be oof, because I don't want to take negative points. Yeah, see, if I put in Stroll, yeah, not worth, discard this all. Now, on Team 2, because I have 2 substitutions, I could drop Leclerc for Hamilton. Stroll is actually gaining. So if I wanted to get budgetary things, right, this would be purely money pick. You drop Alonso for Stroll so that you could then have a good option here. But I think that Alonso usually has been pretty good, even though, you know, reliability and other issues. But let's undo, and we have to wait for FP3. The most likely would be you go for Hamilton, and then you switch Magnussen out for Stroll. That way you get 2 guys that are near the front. The problem is, I don't know with this whole Red Bull situation if they get in engine penalties, but I've already used 2 subs. So if I didn't want to sub out, let's say I put Alonso for Stroll, let's, undo and undo. Okay, so if I wanted to do Hamilton and I wanted to do Alonso for Stroll, right, I'm locked in. I can't switch out Red Bull, and I've already used my wild cards. And so then that would be the situation. If Hamilton had, this is a crazy thing, guys. If Hamilton, I gotta go to the big thing. If Hamilton has a power streak and he had the 3rd fastest time in FP1, now Leclerc was off the board, but if Leclerc's getting a potential penalty and Sainz is getting a potential penalty and Hamilton had the third fastest time, would then elevate him to P2. But let's say Verstappen also gets a penalty because he's been complaining about his car. Hamilton gets pole position with a power streak. Maybe that should be the opportunity for me to mega drive Hamilton, because Hamilton traditionally does not have crashes, traditionally does not have reliability issues. And if Hamilton is going to have a power streak just like we had the race streak with Verstappen last time out where people did Mega Driver, maybe I could use a Mega Driver on Hamilton for Team 2, because there isn't going to be another opportunity for Verstappen to get one of his race streaks, which would be plus 10 points. That might be the thing. Put it in the comments below. Let me know. Is Hamilton the alternative pick for Mega Driver if you've already used it for Verstappen last race and you don't know what to use for the rest of the season? Let me know. That is interesting. Well, I've been J Jack, and until next time, I'll see you on the pit wall.